Today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to look at the A-wing starfighter, one of the fastest ships in the Rebel fleet.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mando number 5.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my channel, Mando number 5, and I'm Keith Guppy. So welcome to episode number 5 of Mando's Best, where I look at all the modern Star Wars collecting lines, take all the vehicles and some characters, and score them and rate them as my favourite. So this week I've gone for the iconic A-wing fighter, which was a real grail in the original vintage line back from the early 80s in the droid packaging. It was re-released for the first time in the Power Force 2 line in 1995, and we've had 5 iterations since then. So let's have a little look at them in a lot of depth. As usual, what I'll do, we'll go through them, have a look at the functions on them, etc. I'll then score them, and I'll tell you then at the end what I think's the best. Usual, we're going to look at the playability, the functions of them, the scale, how they fit with 3.75-inch figures generally. We'll look at the look of the packaging, how they present in the boxes. That's important to me, as I say always. I don't open anything, so that's really important to me. And then we'll see the value and the worth of them. What bang for your buck do you actually get? I think that's really important. Anyway, before we move on to the vehicles, if you're liking the channel, hit the like button, subscribe if you want to see more, and let's get into it. So here it is, ladies and gentlemen, the first reiteration of the A-wing starfighter. This came out in 1995 in the Power Force 2 line. Basically, they released, I think, 5 or 6 A-wings, and I'll go through them all, obviously. But the first few were all just basic retools of the Droids edition, the famous Grail Droids edition from the early 80s. But I think collectors were just really, really happy to see the A-wing released. Now, you can probably get this one on the market now for probably only about 40 or 50 pounds. It had all the markings of the original A-wing, the red in the white livery, but I did have some good weathering on it. It had opening cockpit, which is open at the back. You had a A-wing pilot, which was exclusive with the pack. You had this nice effect on the engines where you had the type of the bit sort of clear plastic, which is quite a nice touch, and it had some really quite nice weathering. But that was it. There was no lights or sounds or anything on this version. And then in 2003, they brought out this green in sort of weathered version, which is pretty damn cool. And this is from the Saga line, Phase 1 from 2003. In this stunning window box. Now, it's very hard to get a good condition one with the window boxes because obviously they get bashed and hit. It came with a pack-in pilot, as all the A-wings did. And excuse the glare on this because this one is actually graded UKG 85. Which again is very hard to get one graded. It was the same mold as the red Power of the Force 2 version from 1995. All the same features, swiveling guns, opening cockpit, and the landing gear. But, these display boxes are really pretty cool if they're in good condition. So yeah, and to get this now, you'd probably be looking at about £80 on eBay right now. And then in 2008, they brought out this version, which again is a throwback to the original Droids version. It's the Green Leader's A-wing fighter. Again, basically the same tooled A-wing, but this time less the clear plastic bits in the engine. Apart from that, it's more or less the same. Now, these are very expensive at the moment. These are probably, you've got to be spending about £150 plus to get one of these days. Unfortunately, this one's had a few bashes and you can see the plastics smashed on the front, which is a real shame, but it looks cool in these window boxes. And you've got Arvel Creeney figure, which is the guy I think who probably plunges into the Super Star Destroyer in Return of the Jedi. But yeah, pretty cool. I mean, in good condition, these look really, really nice. And I've seen one sold recently for about £170, so very, very expensive. But again, just the same features as before: swiveling guns on the side, opening cockpit, and landing gear, and that's about it. But the pilot's very exclusive and it's pretty damn cool. So after the legacy version, they moved on to slightly different tooled A-wings, and this is a much smaller version from Rogue One, and it's got the famous and largely hated Nerf gun feature on it, with the Nerf guns underneath. And these were quickly got rid of. This is really the only line that had the Nerf guns. But a much smaller version of the A-wing from the Rebels series. Some nice artwork on the ends. And there we go. You've got the Hera Syndulla pilot figure, which again I think is pretty exclusive, and obviously different markings from the series on the A-wing, but much more smaller scale A-wing. And if you want to get this one, you probably only have to spend, I don't know, 30, maybe £40 on this one. So, you know, pretty easily got as well. And then finally in 2017, with The Last Jedi release, they brought out 2 more versions of the A-wing. Now, these are slightly bigger than the last version from Rogue One, about the same size as the original Droids one, but it's a completely different retooled one. It looks a lot different. The cockpit looks different. The front is more sort of probably to scale to the film versions. They brought out the blue one, which actually represents the A-wing scene in The Last Jedi with Resistance pilot Tali. And then they actually brought out a red one as well, just to complete it. But on that version, they've just called the pack-in A-wing Resistance pilot. They've got firing missiles on them, opening cockpit, landing gear, and obviously the Force 2 link function. They did a Force link one as well. So there is a third box version of this. I think where the blue A-wing's just facing the other way, but it's the same vehicle. So there you go. Again, these aren't too expensive and too hard to get. Probably about £40 on the aftermarket these are. But the one where the Force Link normal one is probably a little bit more expensive. That's harder to get with the picture facing the other way. But still a really nice ship. Probably, and as I would say, probably more scale to the film version, and the red one's got some quite nice weathering on the front, whereas the blue one is very, very clean. So that's it. That was the last A-wing look. So let's have a look now at how I'd score these and what my favourite version is. So let's look at the scores I've given each one in a bit of detail. But first of all, I just want to point out that after doing a bit of research, I think there were probably 3 A-wings in Star Wars. There was the R2-2 version, I think, which is the Rebels one. Here is one. There was the R2-1 from Return of the Jedi, and then the R2-2 in The Last Jedi. So that would explain a little bit why they're different shapes. So I might be a bit fair to Hasbro to say they're the wrong sort of scale or anything, because they might be actually spot on. So, but I'd be really interested in your comments in the chat to see what you think about that. But anyway, let's score them as I normally do. And we'll start with features and playability. All pretty poor, if I'm honest with you. The first 3 versions, the Power of the Force, the Saga, and the Legacy, didn't have much going on. I know they've all got pack-in pilots, which is okay, but they just had the landing gear, the canopy, and the lasers flipped on the sides. So I've given them all a 6. I know I hate to say this, but the actual Rebels version has got the Nerf gun feature, which is good for kids, and some people like that. So I've given that a 7. And then finally, the Last Jedi version has got, for all the other things, and firing missiles. So I've given that a 7. Then if you move on to the box art and the presentation, the look of the boxes, the Power of the Force, I've given it a 6. It's quite iconic now, but it's nothing fancy really. I've given the Saga 1 an 8. I love the display there, the angle of the box. You can see everything inside. It's got the pilot with a little stand and his helmet on top, which is quite nice. So I've given that an 8. And again, the Legacy version, again, you've got the pilot right at the front, and you've got the clear window over the top of it. So I've given that an 8. And then the Rogue One version, which is obviously the Rebels version, and the Last Jedi version, I've given them both 7s. Then the scale and the look, I might be a bit harsh here because I've given a couple of these quite a low mark, but the Power of the Force 2-1, I've given 7. just because it's, it's weathered, it's okay. I love the green version of the Saga line. It's got some really good marking. The weathering's superb on that version as well. I'd recommend someone to get it. It's really, really nice. The weathering, they took a lot of time over that. And then the Legacy version is a little bit like the Power of the Force. So I'd give that a 7. And then the Rogue One version, Rebels One, whatever you want to say, I'll give that a 6. It's pretty poor. And then finally, the Last Jedi, I've given that a 6. There is a little bit of weathering on them. You can see, especially on the red and white version, you've got the weathering on the front, but there's even a bit of weathering on the blue version as well. So I've given them both a 6. Then in terms of rarity, how difficult are they to find? So the Power of the Force one is, you get it pretty well anywhere. It's about 45 quid. So I've given that a 6. The Saga version, a bit more expensive, 80 quid. It's quite difficult to get actually. So I've given that quite a high score of an 8. And the Legacy one, which is the Walmart exclusive one, I've given that a 9. That's really difficult to get. And it comes up probably once every 3 months on eBay. And then the last two, the Rogue One and the Last Jedi, you can get those pretty much anywhere. So I've given those both a 6. So in terms of value for money, what does that give us? So I've given the Power of the Force only £45 an 8. The Saga one, for the look of it and everything, I've given 8 as well. And then the Legacy one, which is very expensive, I've only given that a 6. That's a lot of money for something that's not much better than the Power of the Force version for £45. £45 versus 150. Yeah. And then the Rogue One version, you do get the Nerf gun bits and pieces and stuff, and it's quite cheap, only £35. So I've given that a 7, and I give a 7-2 as well to the Last Jedi version. So what does that give us in terms of scores overall? And what is Mando's best? So it's very, very tight, but in joint 3rd, 4th and 5th place on 33 points are the Last Jedi, the Rogue One and Power of the Force. All come out about the same, and I pretty much thought that would be the case. So what's in 2nd place? The Legacy version. Probably mostly it's in 2nd because it's so expensive for what it is. I love the box. The A-wing's pretty good. It's got a really nice pilot with it, but just misses out on 36 points. So you guessed it, the winner is the Saga version from 2003 on 38 points. Yeah, it's got everything. It's got the really nice windows, looks really nice in the box. It's got the pilot that's really well displayed. And it's in a green livery with loads of weathering on it. Looks really, really nice. It would look great out of the box as well. So I've given that a 38. So the winner is the Saga one. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that, everybody. I'll see you again soon with Mando's Best next week. Cheers.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mando number 5.